From Chelik Yud Zayin Likkutei Sichos, Chelik Chav Beis Likkutei Sichos, volume 22, the first Sicha on Parshas Vayikra. So the Rebbe brings in section 1, the Medrash states, Rab Asi asked, why do young children begin their Torah study with Toras Kohanim? Toras Kohanim is the term that the Chazal used for the book of Vayikra, because it deals with all things having to do with the Kohanim, and not the book of Bereshis. Why don't we begin with Sefer Bereshis? This custom was common in many places and many times. There's even a story with the Tzemach Tzedek and the Alter Rebbe, that when the Alter Rebbe brought the Tzemach Tzedek into Cheder, he first studied Chumash Vayikra, and it even had a question about the small aleph of the word Vayikra. So this is a very common custom, that they would study the Chumash Vayikra. So the Rab Asi answered, the young children are pure, they are tehorim, and the korbanos, the sacrifices, are tehorim, are pure. Let the pure ones come and occupy themselves with pure matters. Let the tehorim come and yisasku b'toirim. What is meant by the statement? The sacrifices are pure, the korbanos are tahor. Several commentaries explain that the intent is that the korbanos must be brought in a state of purity, tahara, rather than impurity, than tumma. A person that's tummy cannot bring a korban. Other commentaries explain that the intent is that through offering korbanos, one becomes tahor, purified, pure from sin. Both interpretations are not entirely satisfactory. The wording of the Medrash, the korbanos are tahorim, implies that the intent is that the korbanos themselves are tahor, not that those who bring them must be pure or become pure by bringing them. In either of the two explanations we said before, we're talking about either you need to be tahor as a prerequisite to bring the korbanos, or you become tahor through the korbanos. But it's not the korban itself which is tahor. But the term that the Medrash says is vakorbanos tahorim, that the korbanos are tahor, not just that it needs as a prerequisite or it's a result. On the other hand, interpreting the term as pure matters in a straightforward manner, that refers to the korbanos themselves. If you are to call the korbanos and say the korbanos are pure things, that's also difficult to understand. It is also problematic. Nowhere in the Torah are the korbanos, the sacrifices, categorized as pure matters. Tahorim. The word tahorim is not used in regards to korbanos. There is a requirement that the korbanos be tamim, unblemished, that they be of choice quality and the like, but they are never categorized as having to be pure. Section 2. On the surface, it is possible to explain that the Medrash's categorization of korbanos as pure matters is appropriate according to the statement of our Chachamim, of the Chazal, concerning the korbanos offered before Matan Torah. That before Matan Torah, korbanos were not under the same legal strictures as they are after Matan Torah. And because of that, before Matan Torah, all animals were fit to be offered as a korban. Whether it's a domesticated animal, which goes into the term in Lashon Kodesh as a behema, or whether an undomesticated animal, which is called in Lashon Kodesh a chaya, or a fowl, or even any type of bird. It didn't make a difference, males and females, unblemished and blemished animals. All the sacrifices were brought from species that were tahor, pure, meaning kosher, but not from tameim species, impure species. So that is the only qualifier of the korbanos that were brought before the giving of the Torah. Thus, before Matan Torah, the karbonis were categorized. The animals brought for karbonis were categorized as pure. So that definition tells us that there's something here about the karbonos that we are relating to the time before the giving of the Torah, and that's going to be the underlying focus of where the Rebbe is going to go with this. That we are trying to bring out a certain message about the unique quality of the karbonos that took place before the giving of the Torah. The connection between the karbonos offered before Matan Torah and the Torah study of young children is that children are not obligated to bring karbonos. Their situation parallels the karbonos brought before the giving of the Torah. For then there was also no mitzvah or obligation to bring karbonos. So children are not obligated in mitzvahs or karbonos, and before Matan Torah there was no obligation of karbonos as well. So it fits in together. The children are obligated. The karbonos before Matan Torah, which were called tahorim, that was their only definition, that was their only qualification. That is something that is connected with the children that are not obligated to bring karbonos. So even though that seems to be a very interesting association, nevertheless, that explanation is untenable regarding the issue at hand. The Medrash is explaining the reason young children begin studying Toras Kohanim, a term that refers to the book of Vayikra, which contains the laws, the dinim pertaining to the karbonos brought after Matan Torah. Thus, the comparison of children to the karbonos brought before Matan Torah does not appear to be appropriate, because they're not studying about the karbonos that were done before Matan Torah. They're studying about the karbonos from after Matan Torah. They're studying the karbonos as they are in Chumash Vayikra. Section 3. After quoting the above-mentioned teaching, Medrash Tanchuma proceeds to state, therefore, I, meaning Hashem, consider it as if they are standing and offering sacrifice before me. When the children learn the karbonos, so then Hashem considers it as if they are actually bringing the karbonos. Let it be known to you that although the Beis Hamikdash is destroyed and the karbonos are no longer practiced, were it not for the young children who recite the order of the sacrifices, shekoydim b'seder karbonos, the world would not be maintained. Lo yahaya olam oimid. The Medrash continues, therefore the Holy One, blessed be He, tells the Jewish people, tells Israel, my children, if you involve yourselves with the passages describing the sacrifices, the karbonos. In other words, you learn the different parts of the Chumash that deal with that. I will consider it as if you are offering a carbon. That statement does not applies not only to children, but to any Jew who occupies himself with the parts of the Torah passages describing the karbonos. He is considered as if he actually offered a carbon. This is somewhat puzzling, the Rebbe states, for how can this statement be reconciled with the Medrash's previous teaching that highlights the study of the karbonos by young children, specifically stating that were it not for the reading of the order of the karbonos, the world would not be maintained. So which is it? Is it something specific to children, or is it any Jew? So the Rebbe comes to the conclusion, we are forced to say, that although both adults and children who study the laws of the karbonos are considered to have offered karbonos, even so, there is a virtue and an advantage to the study of Toras Kohanim, Chumash Vayikra, by young children that surpasses the study of the subject by all others. Young children's study specifically possesses a consummate quality that enables the world to be maintained, that the olam should be oimed. The Rebbe continues in section 4. The above concepts can be clarified by first explaining what the Chachamim say, what the Chazal say earlier, that we mentioned previously, that before Matan Torah, it was possible to offer karbonos from all pure tahor, meaning kosher species. This concept is derived from the Torah's description of the korbanos brought by Noach as coming from all the kol ha-behema Torah, all the pure animals, which means that was the entire qualifier. As long as the animals were pure, you could bring from any of them. The Talmud questions that statement. How can you say such a thing? Were there pure and impure species at that time? Was there Torah and Talmudic species? There was no Torah animals and Tomei animals until giving of Torah, meaning the Torah was yet to be given. And this categorization was yet to be established, that there are certain animals that are Tahor, kosher, and certain animals that are Tomei, that are not kosher. According to one version, the Talmud answers that this reference is to those species that would ultimately be categorized as Tahor, as pure, as Rashi states in this commentary in the Torah, that this was for the future, that what in the future would be considered pure, Noach brought into the Teva, and he would bring the korbanos from them. Thus, the korbanos Noach brought before Matan Torah represent a paradox. On the one hand, the offering of the korbanos by Noach did not involve the observance of a mitzvah. Indeed, in contrast to the Avis, Noach is not described as having observed the entire Torah before it was given. The Avis, it says, Avraham, Yitzchak, Yankov, they fulfilled the entire Torah. It doesn't say that about Noach. His korbanos resembled those that would regularly be brought, even before the Torah was given. People, for various reasons, beginning with Adam Harishon, the first man, felt motivated by their own feelings to bring korbanos to Hashem, but it wasn't done as a fulfillment of Torah as the Avos did when they were doing the mitzvahs of the Torah even before they were given. And they had therefore only that limitation that it had to bring from what would futurely be Toradic animals. In the future, they would be designated as kosher animals. On the other hand, the fact that Noach offered only animals from species that would in the future be categorized as pure as Tahor indicates that then was no distinction between pure Tahor, meaning kosher animals, and Talmudic animals. As the Gemara asks, were there pure and impure species at the time? Meaning there was no distinction. It was just on the future of it. However, this applied only with regard what man could eat or the like, that there was no distinction between Tahor animals and Tomei animals, kosher animals, not kosher animals. Nevertheless, the fundamental distinction between species that would ultimately be defined as Tahor, meaning kosher, and those that would be defined as Tomei, already existed, and this was actually having to do with the korbanos, like we said before, had to be brought before Matan Torah from kosher species. Thus, from Noach's time onward, the existence of these distinctions established by the Torah had already begun, because it may have been that way by Adam Rishon as well, but it doesn't say that openly that this was something that Adam made such a distinction. By Noach is the first place in the Torah that it's explicitly stated that way. True, this was before Matan Torah, and furthermore, even before the era of the Avos, who observed the entire Torah before it was given, conducting themselves in a manner similar to that required after Matan Torah. However, inherently there already existed distinctions between species. For that reason, Noach brought a korban specifically from species that were pure, meaning those species that would ultimately be categorized as Tahor. The connection between Noach and the distinctions established by the Torah is found only with regard to sacrifices. The only thing that we find that Noach was in some way connected with what type of categorization that the Torah would give in the future, we find it only concerning korbanos. We don't find it concerning anything else. Accordingly, it is possible to say that it is specifically the concept of korbanos that is of unique relevance to man even before the receiving of the Torah, meaning before Matan Torah, in a general sense, and before the beginning of each individual's direct connection with the Torah. Meaning, just like there is the Matan Torah in the general sense, and there's the korbanos that shows that there's a connection and service of Hashem prior to the giving of the Torah, so too there's a time in one's life that is the matan Torah of their life, as we will explain soon that goes on bar and bas mitzvah. And then there is the time prior to that, which is childhood, and we can explain specifically what level in childhood. Section 5. It is possible to offer the following explanation. Even after the Torah was given and the korbanos were counted among the 613 mitzvahs of the Torah, the effect they bring about, and thus their inner nature of the korbanos, transcends the Torah and its mitzvahs. This is expressed in what they are meant to accomplish. Therefore, they can atone and compensate. They could be a kapara for a lack generated by a deficiency in the observance of Torah and its mitzvahs. We know that korbanos are different types of korbanos, are different types of kaparas, atonement, and this means how can the korbanos atone? Because they come from a place and a deeper spiritual connection that is beyond the connection of Torah mitzvahs with Hashem. Stated slightly differently, when a Jew brought a korban to Hashem, he expressed his closeness to Hashem and the bond he shared with him. This bond was and continues to be an inherent dimension of every Yid. He possesses it by the virtue of his birthright as a Jew, regardless of his standing apropos his observance of a Torah and its mitzvahs. Just as this bond is not achieved through the observance of Torah and its mitzvahs, it cannot be diminished through the lack of such observance. For the essential bond the Jew shares with Hashem transcends the Torah and its mitzvahs. In that vein, building on the pasuk, the verse, "Bon nematum Hashem Elokechem," you are children of Hashem, of God your Lord. Chazal explained that it is as if Hashem says, no matter what the Jews' level of observance, it says, "Af al pi shechatu banayhem," even though they sin, they are my children. This is the reason why sacrifices atone for sin and transgression. When a Jew, chas v'shalom, heaven forbid, violates Hashem's will, he creates a blemish, a defect in the oneness with Hashem that is established through the observance of Torah and its mitzvahs. When a person learns Torah and does mitzvahs, he is joining with Hashem. He has a bond with Hashem, and that unity with Hashem becomes blemished through an Aveira chas v'shalom. When the Beis HaMikdash stood, he could repair this bond by offering korbanos. Doing so aroused and revealed the essential connection he shared with Hashem that can never be tarnished. The revelation of this essential bond brings about kapara, atonement, meaning it washes away the blemish created by sin and transgression. This is very similar to what the Rebbe often explains about the mitzvah of tshuva in general, that tshuva is higher than all the mitzvahs because it's able to atone for all the mitzvahs. And in a similar vein, the Maila of Yom Kippur, that Yom Kippur is higher than all the mitzvahs because it's able to attain and renew, meaning that the Yom Kippur bond of Hashem with a Yid, or Yom Kippur has revealed the bond of Hashem and the Jewish people. It's beyond any type of performance of mitzvahs. It's a bond that transcends that. Section 6, based on the above, it is possible to gain a more complete understanding of the entire concept of korbanos. On the surface, a question can arise on korbanos in general. Offering korbanos represents the primary dimension of the vector of avodah, service. Meaning, there are three vectors in the terminology of the translation over here. Three kavim, Torah, avodah, and gemilas chasadim. One of the three, there's only three, so a basic kav is avodah. One of the means Hashem established to enable the Jews to bond with Him. How is it possible that this avodah, this service, is achieved by slaughtering an animal and offering it on the mizbeach, on the altar? On the surface, it would be more fitting to attempt to achieve this goal through a spiritual endeavor, through tefillah, prayer, described by our Chazal as the avodah shebalev, the service of the heart, and the like, which express the bond between the Jews and Hashem in a more apparent manner. A physical slaughtering of an animal, how does that show and express a connection with Hashem? In particular, this is true because offering karbonis is not a form of service exclusive to the Jewish people. Non-Jews may also offer karbonis and may even bring them at the Beis Hamikdash, as it is well known. So, if you're going to describe something that's talking about bringing a closeness between Hashem and the Jewish people, shouldn't you use something that is unique to the Jewish people, not something that the Jewish people have seemingly in common with non-Jews, and not something that's seemingly so coarse and low as a physical sacrifice being brought? Based on the above, it can be said that this paradox is self-explanatory. The connection between the Jews and Hashem transcends any bond that they could possibly establish through their own avodah, divine service, of observing the Torah and its mitzvahs. Rather, it stems entirely from Hashem's free choice. In other words, Hashem is the one that's creating the bond over here through the carbon. It's not the Yid's own work. His own work should have been maybe more spiritual, but Hashem chose the Jewish people, like we'll soon explain, in their physical bodies, and He chose to connect them in their physical manner of the karbonos. Thus, although it's written Esav is Yaakov's brother, meaning this is Havale Ach Esav Yaakov, meaning seemingly a Yid and a non-Jew are alike. Externally, they seem to be. Hashem made a choice. And as the verse continues, I love Yaakov as Yaakov, Va'oiv as Yaakov, bonding himself with the Jewish people in a manner that is not at all dependent on their righteousness or desire to connect to them. For this very reason, the relationship between Hashem and the Jews is expressed specifically through the avodah, the service of offering karbonos, an act in which their spiritual virtue is not obviously recognizable, nor is it possible to distinguish between a Jew bringing a carbon and a non-Jew doing so. Nevertheless, it is only the Jews' offering of karbonis that arouses the essential bond that stems from Hashem's choice. To cite a parallel where we see that there's seemingly something that the Jews have in common, and still in all Hashem chose it to be something by the Jews and not by the non-Jews. Hashem's choice of the Jews manifests itself specifically in their bodies which physically appear to resemble the body of the non-Jews, and still in all, Hashem chose the body of the Jews. But the Alter Rebbe says that the choice that Hashem chose, the Jew is in their body where the body seems similar. The same thing, the special bond that the karbonos, that the physical offering of sacrifices has with Hashem, is unique to the Jewish people because Hashem's choice and bond that He has with the Jewish people that transcends the bond of any other mitzvah. Section 7. On this basis, it's possible to understand why the karbonos brought by Noach before Matan Torah relate to the karbonos offered afterwards, meaning they were categorized as tahor, pure, because of their future status. There is a relationship. There is a connection. Noach's karbonos was called tahor because the future karbonos would be tahor, which means even though this was before Matan Torah, this was after Matan Torah, they still have a certain commonality between them. Noach offered karbonos as a gesture of thanks to Hashem for saving him from the Mabul, the flood, as it is written, Vayikra Lekimas Noach Goimer, and Hashem remembered Noach. This pasuk is so important to the Jewish people after the giving of the Torah, that this pasuk is one of those included in the Zechroinus brachas, blessings recited in the Musaf service of Rosh Hashanah. We know that during Rosh Hashanah we recite psukim from the Tanakh that speak about Hashem's kingship, psukim of Tanakh that speaks about the idea of shofar, and psukim from Tanakh that speak about Hashem's remembrance. The remembrance psukim, it includes Vayikra Lekimas Noach. meaning it is connected with the remembrance of you, the Jewish people, coming before me in a positive light. That's what the Gemara says. Why do we say the psukim of Zechroinus during Musaf of Rosh Hashanah? We say it because Sheyala Zachrenechem Lefonai L'Toiva. It's about the Jewish people coming in a positive light, be remembered by Hashem. So, what's the connection? Noach is not connected with the Jewish people. So the Rebbe is going to bring from what it says in Mamorich Chassidus, as it is well known, the reason that Hashem remembered Noach is because of the essential virtue of the souls of the Yidden. That's what it says in Mamorich Chassidus, that this has to do with the Jewish people that would come about. For this reason, in that bracha, we relate, you recalled Noach with love, Vayikra Noach be'ava, meaning referring to the essential inner love existing between Hashem and the Jews that transcends any virtue resulting from their avodas Hashem, and therefore it could be a mechaper on averis because it's beyond their service, it's from a higher level. Noach lived before Matan Torah, meaning before the time when Hashem chose us from all nations and the tongues, his relationship to the Jewish people, Noach's, does not even resemble that of the Avis, who, as the title implies, why they called Avis, because they are the forefathers of the Jewish people. So he doesn't even share that connection with the Jewish people. Nevertheless, he shares a connection with the neshamas, with the souls of the Jewish people. As a result of that connection, because of the essential virtue of the souls of the Jews, Hashem recalled Noach with love, Vayikra, that he remembered Noach with love. On this basis, we can understand why the Karbanos Noach offered in appreciation of Hashem remembering him and saving him from the Mabul, from the flood, are related to the sacrifices the Jews brought after the giving of the Torah, after Matan Torah. This also explains why the Medrash cited initially describes the sacrifices mentioned in the book of Vayikra as pure tahor, using the wording that categorizes karbanos brought even before Matan Torah, as mentioned above, because they share that common denominator, that it's to recall the karbanos that Noach brought, that their entire qualification was the level of being tahor. And we should realize that the karbanos, even after Matan Torah, are karbanos that are bringing that bond of Hashem with the Yidden beyond Torah mitzvahs. As mentioned, the inner theme of the karbanos is to reveal the essential love Hashem has for the Jewish people that transcends his love for them, that results from their observance of the Torah. This essential love was expressed to a greater degree through the karbanos brought by Noach before Matan Torah, before the karbanos were commanded. Then afterwards, after Matan Torah, offering karbanos became a mitzvah. As such, their transcendence over acts mandated by Torah is not manifest in an apparent manner. The truth is that they are, but you need to recollect the karbanos of Noach to inform us that even the karbanos after Matan Torah, it transcends Torah mitzvahs, just like Noach's karbanos had nothing to do with Torah mitzvahs and brought about the remembrance of Noach, and by that the Jewish people of the future. Section 8. On this basis, it is possible to understand why the Medrash states that young children should begin their Torah studies in Torah's Kohanim, the book of Vayikra that describes the laws of the sacrifices, so that the pure ones come and involve themselves with pure matters. Yalvayu tahorim v'yisasku b'toirim. 3 inclusive periods in the evolution of the Jewish people were mentioned above. A, the periods following Matan Torah, when the Jews accepted the Torah and its mitzvahs, observing them as divine commandments. B, the period beginning with the Avis, who observed the entire Torah before it was given. And C, the period beginning with Noach, who merely shared a connection to the Torah, relating at least to its concepts of purity and impurity. In other words, Tumah v'Tara, as we said before, even though Noach had nothing to do with the time of Matan Torah, but there was the idea of Tumah and Tara as far as the Karbanis. It is possible to see that parallels to these three periods exist within every Jew's personal life. After a youth reaches bar mitzvah or bas mitzvah age and is obligated to observe the mitzvahs. That's like Matan Torah, or after Matan Torah. B, from the time the children reach an educable age. It's called the age of chinuch, when their observance of mitzvahs serves as a preparation for the time when they become obligated to do so. Just like the Avos, their mitzvah observance was to a certain degree a preparation, and the Rebbe speaks about this in other Sichos, for the mitzvahs that would be done afterwards by the Yidden. See, before a child reaches the age of chinuch, an educable age, when the child has no association with the actual observance of the mitzvahs. Nevertheless, since he or she is a Jewish child, even then he or she shares a connection to the Torah. Moreover, the entire Torah was given to him or her as an inheritance, Meirasha Kehilas Yaakov. As it is written, the Torah Moshe commanded us, is the inheritance of the congregation of Yaakov. And an heir, even an infant on the day of his birth, inherits all his father left him. So therefore, a child's connection with the Torah, even a baby that doesn't even have the obligation of a Torah, still the Torah is his. Thus, he or she shares a connection with the parameters established by the Torah. Before a youth reaches an educable age, the Gil Chinuch, the concept of Avodas Hashem, divine service through the actual observance of the Torah and its mitzvahs, is not relevant. He's prior to Chinuch. He has no obligation to observe the mitzvahs, not as an adult. He has no obligation even to observe the mitzvahs to train himself. He's before the age of Chinuch. Accordingly, the essential characteristic such a child possesses by virtue of being Jewish is more evident. It's just their pure Jewishness. It has no other purpose and meaning. The inner essential love which Hashem loves every Jew is revealed to a greater extent by Jewish children who have not yet reached educable age, because it's not about what they will do for me. It's Hashem's essential connection with the Jewish people. This is the intent of the Medrash's teaching. Let the pure ones come and involve themselves with pure matters. The Kabbalah expresses Hashem's essential love for the Jewish people, a love that transcends the love stemming from their study of the Torah. And it is because of that inner love that the Karbanos bring about Kapara, atonement. Thus, the sacrifices are intrinsically pure. What does it mean, intrinsically pure? It doesn't just mean because Noach's purity. It's a purity of the essential state of the sacrifice, for they relate to a level of godliness that entirely transcends the concept of impurity. It's an essential purity. It's similar to what the Rebbe speaks about. Moida Ani is recited before Negelwasser because no tumah in the world can touch the Moida Ani of a Yid. Therefore, it is fitting that the passages concerning them, the psukim, the parts of the Torah that speaks about the Karbanos, be studied by pure ones, children who are intrinsically pure, having no connection with impurity. Why are they no connection with impurity? In the words of the Medrash, who do not know, it says they not taste any flavor of sin, meaning they are entirely removed from the taste of sin and transgression, because the essential bond of love between Hashem and the Jewish people shines forth within them in an apparent manner. So the Karbanos has to do with a deep and essential level of godliness beyond Torah mitzvahs, and the connection that Hashem has with Jewish children is beyond any type of limit and any type of form of their observance of Torah mitzvahs. Section 9. Based on all the concepts explained above, it's understood why it is specifically the Tahorim, the pure ones, who involve themselves in Tahorim and pure matters. The young children who study Torah's Kohanim, that enables the world's existence to be maintained, though we said adults also maintain the world. through being involved in the Karbonis. When adults involve themselves with the passages concerning the Karbonis, they do not perform any action. Their involvement engages merely their thought and speech. They're studying it. They're studying it with their mind. They're studying it with their lips. As the Alter Rebbe explains, a person is obligated to observe all the mitzvahs in thought, speech, and action. With regard to the Karbonis, thought corresponds to tefillah, avodah shebalev, service of the heart, which parallels offering the sacrifices, and speech corresponds to the Torah study concerning the sacrifices. These are the two ways how we have Karbonis nowadays, that when we daven, using our mind and our intention, that is avodah shebalev, the service of our heart, that is the Karbonis that we offer. And similarly, when we study Torah with our lips, with our mouth, then we're studying the Torah having to do with the halachas and the psukim about the Karbonis. It's as if we offer the Karbonis. These two garments of the soul, thought and speech, primarily reveal a person's thinking processes or his feelings and emotions. This is already like a defined type of expression of his connection to Hashem. Although thought and speech involve letters, meaning language, that enclose thoughts or feelings, the letters are not of primary importance. What is fundamental is the thought or the feeling that is enclosed in them. Since it is the person's own thoughts and feelings are being revealed, the essential virtue of the Jews that stems from Hashem's choice of the Jews is not so evident, because it's their intellect and their heart that's involved over here in the process. By contrast, when children read and study the book of Vayikra, Torah's Kohanim, specifically in the initial stages of their study, when they are merely learning to read, before they reach an age when they are capable of understanding what the mitzvahs are, they're not even higiu l'chinuch, they do not do so without intermingling with what they read with their own conceptual process. It's completely Hashem's words, not my feelings, not my intellect, not my emotions, etc. This is particularly true according to the prevailing Jewish custom that young children only begin their study with the book of Vayikra. Afterwards, however, when their mind is already starting to develop more, they study other matters, each place following the local custom where exactly they should begin their Torah studies. Thus, they are merely reading. Initially, when they first come into Cheder, when they first are exposed to Chumash Vayikra, they're only reading, and the meaning of what they read is not significant, only the movement of their lips. This evokes the essential love of Hashem, because as explained in section 6, Hashem's choice is focused on the Jews' bodies. Consequently, it's their study that in a consummate matter maintains the world's existence more so than the adults that do so, because it's about their own action, the most basic worldly type of fulfillment of the Karbonis.